Does anybody have any questions about any of the top spline stuff that we've covered so far? I think I wanted to add, Doug kind of compelled me to go into to finish out this board, kind of get it ready for lacquer. It's not like a full, I don't think I have a full thing on it, but we can certainly go over it. But I thought doing a little Q&A and then talking about what's next, I think is interesting. I do want to get somebody on to get us learned up on some French polishing techniques, which I think would be good for finishing out the top spline stuff. But I also have Fountain City is going to be making up some Gibson SG style boards, and people are going to be able to. Who said that? So you're going to be able to buy the board or make the board. We'll go over how to make the boards too. But that's going to get into like airbrushing techniques, edging techniques, and then a little bit more complicated finish schedule because it's got toner coats to deal with. So, but I think maybe I'm kind of leaning towards going over French polishing first, but I kind of wanted to get the group's feelings on that. So where's everybody at with those ideas? You want to move on to Gibson SG Red with airbrush and all that, or do you want to hang out for a little bit more on spruce with some French polishing techniques?
I'm down for French polishing.
Okay.
French polishing would be fine. I can help with going over French polishing as a repair technique.
That would be good.
Frank Ford would be good for that too. There's not a ton to French polishing other than if you're going to get, super like mad scientist about mixing your shellac, with all sorts of gums, resins.
It's a very simple technique.
Yeah, it's not really hard to do, whether you're doing it on a raw piece or whether you're doing it over lacquer or something like that as a repair technique. I do both.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll put together something with you for the French polishing.
Cool. So let's just do just roughly do a show of hands. Does everybody know how to raise their hand? If you'd like to stick around for French polishing, or if you'd like us to hang out for French polishing, raise your hand. If you'd like us to move on to the mahogany stuff, don't raise your hand. And if you can't raise your hand, say you can't raise your hand, and then I'll.
Just from a scheduling standpoint, people are going to need to get the boards in, and that'll take time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
What's the question about whether you're raising your hand for what or what? I don't understand.
Oh, the hand raising is for French polishing. The not raising your hand is for moving on to the mahogany stuff with the airbrush. It looks like it's.
I'm a total techno adult here, so I can't figure out how to raise my hand. So my hand's raised.
Okay. I'm gonna go with. We're gonna hang out and do the French polishing. Which Grace's hand isn't raised, so I'm going to assume that's going to make her very upset. So let's see here. All right, so we put the spline in, and or at least when I did the last one, we put the spline in, and we kind of left it there. And then Doug very graciously offered to show how to use the crack tool from Ibex, and some of his techniques for painting up a spline on some spruce that was on a classical guitar. And I was going to show a couple techniques that I did for that I've used over the course of my career for leveling these out and getting them ready for finish. Doug covered in the one that he did. Nothing looks dumber than a top spline that is above the surface of the parent material. So conversely, I find that they can look pretty bad below the level too. And so in the old days, I used to like try to like come in here and just level right on the spline and kind of bring it down, you know, between the lines just to the, you know, just underneath the finish. And it led to some pretty funky results for a couple reasons. One is when I was going back and painting, everything was so close together on tiny splines that I was getting these crazy surface tension issues with my colors. Doug and his was talking about doing kind of a dished trough to get away with that, and I think that's good. I think like if you're doing them super duper tiny, like there's it's hard to make a trough like that. So basically kind of what I do is if I've got like, so this, let's see here, let me pin my so I can see what I'm pointing at. But so this top spline right here is probably, you know, 15 thousandths or something. I would say maybe, or maybe more like 20. I'm going to sand down, and I want to expose parent wood on either side of that by about 5 thousandths. Not only is that going to give me like more of a tapered edge out to the finish line, but it's also going to give me like we changed back to the, all right, so it's going to give me, I've lost my train of thought. So it's going to give me less surface tension issues, but it's also going to give me a really good idea of when I get below the line of the finish, because you're going to start seeing the parent wood and it's going to be like very obvious that you've hit it and that you need to stay off of it. When you're just trying to keep it inside those, you know, inside the spline line and you're bringing it down, it's not super clear that you're at that level. Like it's pretty hard to tell. I've got this, you know, I've got my RoboCop magnifier on here, and even when I get down on there and really stare at it, it can be pretty challenging to tell that you're just below the level of the surface. Hold on a second, let me see what Grace says. Does that make sense to everybody? Oh, Grace, the surface tension issues basically are, you know, the shellac, I use the Zinsser spray shellac for a lot of reasons, because it doesn't do that window painting thing. But also what can happen is, you know, I don't know if it's electrostatic or what, but if you've got like these kind of edges, like sometimes it can draw your color out to the edges. And especially on a tiny spline, you may paint like right in the middle, and then you'll come back and you'll kind of have these dark lines along the edge. It's something that Doug mentioned in his thing, and it's, you know, like why he, you know, puts an indentation kind of like this. But I do it just a little bit differently. So does that make sense? Okay, I see. Thanks. Anybody else have any questions about that? Shellac is a real tough medium to touch up in. Like all of the mediums that we use for this stuff, or at least that I've experienced. Somebody once told me of a medium that they touched up in for guitars that was very forgiving. But so far for me, the Zinsser spray shellac, for whatever they use to make that come out aerosol, it also works beautifully as a medium. Like it really, I mean, if you hog it on, you will get window painting, but with just gentle brushings, it tends to not window paint on me. So I would guess that you've all seen the plexiglass and double stick, or not double stick, but sticky sandpaper technique. Anybody not aware of that now? I'm going to do something a little bit different because the sticky sandpaper isn't sticky enough to actually hold a piece of sandpaper small enough to do a top spline. So I actually grab a piece and I cut it and I glue it on. So it's just a little bit of wax paper. I'll get my tweezers. So
Can you move
everybody-
that onto the workboard? And
What's
so we can
that?
get the, can you move that onto the workboard while you're doing
Yeah,
it so we can
I
get
think I
that top
can
down?
here. Let me see here. Everybody see that little piece of sandpaper there?
Looks great.
There are a couple of questions about what you mean by window painting, if you could describe that.
So window painting is like you put down a nice coat of shellac, and then it all kind of retreats to the edge of whatever that you did, and you'll have like a thinner layer in the middle of your application, and this kind of ridge that goes around the exterior of the shellac.
You're talking about like when snow accumulates around the edges of your window pane.
I think so. Well, yeah, I'm not, that's actually terminology that was handed down to me. I'm not exactly sure where it came from. I would think it was probably more like, the window is thin in the center, and so can everybody see what I've done there? Got my my sandpaper glued onto my clear plexi. And then I'm going to come back and just right over that.
Do you prefer gluing it or you just don't?
If I got a big spline, then I will definitely use the sticky sandpaper. But the stick on the sandpaper is just not, it's not good enough for when it's that small.
Gotcha.
It'll just like swirl all over the block and create a nuisance.
What grit is that?
This is 220 grit. Oh, and this is, by the way, this is that kind of waxy back 3M stuff that is everywhere. It works a lot better without the waxy back. Like if you can find some proper, just like solid paper back stuff, it's good. Somebody else have a question? So this is where I'm gonna start simulating, basically simulating clear coat with naphtha. Once you abrade things, you're creating a lot of little pores for diffusing of light. Like the whole thing is gonna be sanded. It can be very difficult to see what's happening through all that abrasion. So I usually come back with some naphtha, take a look at what I got going, clear, at the very least, clear off the dust, and then start to sand it again. You want to let that naphtha flash off. If you sand wet spruce, even if it's wet with naphtha, you can tear it up pretty good. So let that naphtha flash off a little bit.
That's just a flat piece of plexi you've got there. You don't have the runners
Yep.
on it this time.
Flat piece of plexi. Depending on what you're doing, you could put some tape outriggers on there to set your depth. So I haven't measured this, but I would be surprised if that isn't going to be like slightly deeper than the amount of finish that I've gotten on there. So I might, like, if I wasn't like super sure of myself, I might put a couple pieces of thin tape on either side and give myself like a basically outriggers in there. You can still see what's going on. Okay, so one other technique I want to talk about. I was just reminded of this. I haven't done this in some time, but it's a variation on the Frank Ford scraper technique. So I basically held a razor blade over the spline and then made two marks. Can everybody see that? Two marks where roughly the width of the spline. There we go. Can everybody see that? Two purple marks in the middle of the razor blade. I need at least one person to tell me that they can see that.
It looks awesome.
Okay.
So
Kevin.
So then I took it over to the grinder and I ground a little tooth in it that was that width. Can everybody see that little tooth there?
Yep.
Okay. So then
What's your guess on the depth of that, Ian?
the depth of it, I'd say is probably like maybe a 16th, but I'm going to come back with tape, kind of like the Frank Ford tape technique. Oops. now I've got basically a depth controlled, fairly narrow scraper. Man, I need to go back to this because that works pretty darn good.
Are you using that blade pretty
What's
well
that?
straight? Are you using the blade pretty well straight? Or did you
Pretty,
turn,
yeah, I'm giving it just a little bit of an angle.
or did you turn a hook on it before you
No,
grab-
straight out of the package.
Okay.
100% straight out of the package. So this is probably where I ought to talk about the difference between doing this on a brand new guitar that's got, you know, blonde, brand new UV protected finish versus doing this on an old guitar that's been ambered. So that wandering outside of that line, in my experience, figuring out a way with color to simulate ambered lacquer, it's subtle stuff to get it to look halfway decent, and I've never made it look 100%. Like if you've got a line going down the middle of a guitar, you know, in the middle of the, you know, top between the bridge and the tail block, you want to like minimize how much vintage finish you're trying to replicate. It is very tough to make pigmented or dyed lacquer look like lacquer that's been UV'd out. There are a few tricks and you can get close, but it always winds up being that stuff just it just catches the light different. And even if you nail the color like super dead on, you're gonna like go into some angle or something and it's gonna show off just because it's just a completely different animal. Some people, you know, tip wise will put lacquer, you know, like lacquer that doesn't have super horrendous UV inhibitors in it in a window and let it amber over time. That's a good technique for combating that flash. The chances that you're going to get, you know, a jar of lacquer to look like, you know, old formulation lacquer that's been on a guitar for 70 years is probably not, it's probably not going to happen. You can get closer, and who knows, like if you split the difference, if you got like ambered lacquer that you ambered up to a certain point and then you only got to push it like, you know, 10 more, you know, 20, 30 more % with your dyes and your pigments, then that can certainly I could see how that would get you to a better space. Any questions on this, doohickey? That seemed pretty straightforward.
I think we're all stealing that one.
So when you're doing this, it's going to be pretty important to stick your tongue out the side of your mouth too. Get like one of your hands on. Guitar faces and Lutheran faces are remarkably similar, by the way. Whatever dumb thing you do with your mouth when you play it, when you first start playing guitar, it's probably what you do when you're Lutheran.
And about how much blade would you say you have left exposed after taping it?
Oh, I don't know. Like, I could measure it really quick. So this looks to be about 0.65. You know, for it's maybe a little bit of aggressive a cut. I might have brought that down to like, you know, what did I say? Like I want to go maybe five on either side. So, you know, maybe I would have brought that down to 30 if I was really trying hard. It's pretty hard to put that. It's pretty hard to put a gentle, you know, I was using the grinder for this. So getting down to 0.020 or 0.030 is probably going to be pretty challenging on a grinder. You might have to ask James Rodman to bang one out on his milling machine for you. So.
And how tall is that blade from the
Well,
tape?
after it's taped off, I mean, I think I've only got like 5 or 6 thousandths exposed on the end of this. So,
Awesome.
but can you guys see this little shaving it's taken right there? Alan says
Yep.
diamond lapping plates would work well for this. I think that's right. But that's a pretty nice result. I can't believe I moved away from this and went back to sanding. Crazy. So I'm starting to feel that the cut's letting up because of the tape. But so that, I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but I've still got a little bit of like, let me just do this really quick. I'm gonna scrape some of the old, I got some G-Flex from painting outside of the lines on this just a little bit, and I'm gonna take off. But that's showing off more. So let me normalize the sheen just really quick with some shellac. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm getting some weird reflection where there's some abrasions and stuff like that. But actually when it's all said and done, before I get into that really weird angle right there, like that's a pretty good result. Like I'd be pretty psyched with this, like on a Santa Cruz or a Bourgeois or something where it was just like pale maple, and I just threw a 20 thousandths spline in it. It looks a little white because it's got scrapings to it, but let's see if I can take care of that with a little shellac. Plus, I didn't put any energy into figuring out the run out of this thing either, so it's probably it's maybe a little worse for wear because of the run out. I'll take a picture of this and show it to you guys later. So yeah. A couple more things. Any questions on this so far?
Your end result that you're looking for there before you start applying any finish is like a little kind of miniature box shaped trough.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably like it's been some time since I've used this, and this will definitely give me a box shaped trough. And I think you're right. Like, I don't want abrupt edges. I think those are going to create like pooling hazards.
Would you
So
ever
I would-
consider using like a small riffler set for something like that?
You know, like maybe I'd come back. Like all my files are so screwed up with dirt and crap. Like I'd be hesitant to like apply a file to this, like from my own file set. Like if I had you know, like a brand new set that I'd soaked in naphtha for 3 years, I might do that. So did somebody have a question? I saw something go in the chat.
That was just me saying that the edges draw the color.
Yeah. So this one too, like I probably wouldn't use any color on this. Like my next move would be to hit it with some shellac flat in it, to kind of do what Doug was talking about in the previous one, where he was adding pumice to his French polish, to add kind of a diffusing layer to where you can't really tell what's going on. You know, like, is it a new piece? Isn't it? It's hard to tell because it looks like the camera lens they used for Barbara Walters. So,
Put some Vaseline on the lens.
that's right. Like, is Barbara Walters 500 years old or not? I can't tell. It's just
Kind
too
of
good.
disguises the wrinkles.
That's a good way of putting it, Alan. Those flattening agents are, it's like Vaseline on the lens. Okay. Yeah, I hit this again. With the sanding paper, take the thing off here. It's important to be careful about this too. Like, it definitely can look shitty if you go the other direction and you go too deep. Like, because then you're gonna look at it from the edge and you're actually gonna see that edge. So if you've got like, you know, if you've got a trough like this and it's below the edge, like when you're looking at it on an angle, your eye is gonna, that edge is gonna register as dark because it's not like, you know, like one edge is catching the light weird, the other edge is catching the light weird. The whole thing's probably gonna register as dark if you go below it too much.
If you have too deep a wall to your trough, it's going to reflect light differently when it hits it as you move around the guitar.
So some of what you're seeing here too is the when I glued this in, I glued it in with G-Flex. And hey Ted, can you give me a single pin on that? Can you give me a single pin on the workboard? I also glued that in with G-Flex with white pigment in it to pick up the slack on any of the places where, like I just couldn't get it to fit quite right. And it did that pretty well, but unfortunately that G-Flex pigment is gonna it's not gonna look like wood, it's gonna look like pigment. It's gonna maintain its color evenly no matter which angle that you look at it. So coming in and touching it too and feeling this, like make sure your fingers are clean. But I don't know if I'm just becoming so blind that I have to do this or it's just impossible to see. But this is going to give you a lot better, just kind of a more thorough read than your eyes are, at least for me. Like I can feel right in there. It's still proud of the surface just a little, just a skosh. All right. So let's finish this out in CA, I think. Anybody have any pushback on any of this? Anybody seeing anything they're wondering, Jesus?
I just have a question about whether you guys have ever made use of those spring-loaded sanding sticks with the little circular tape, it's a plastic sanding stick with a tape that you can pull around it to expose a clean area each time. It gives you a very, I would say, a 0.5 millimeter of sanding area. And I've done a lot of work with cracks using one of those.
Mac used to sell those.
I think it's a 220 paper on there. I don't know if anybody still sells them anymore, but I still have some, from back in the day, and I use those. But I like your little gag with the razor blade, because you're raising a curl on it, like as though it was a plane. So it's doing a good job.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I haven't used those little sanding sticks. Something about that was because the sanding sticks are so they require the purpose-built sanding things. Like for me, it's like when I was a kid, avoiding remote control cars because I couldn't afford the batteries.
I totally get that. Yeah, you have to buy the little sanding circles. Also, for this thing that you're doing with the razor blade, many of us have used very small German chisels for the same purpose, but you can only get so far. And after you get it down with the chisel, you resort to the sanding. But prior to that, if you want to get your spline below the level of the finish, you can actually very judiciously wet the spline and cut it with the chisel. And then when it dries, it'll be below the level of the finish. That's the old technique.
Grain
Yeah,
raising?
that's the old technique. That's how it was done.
What's going on with the shellac flat?
So I'm just coming in here, like, this is what I would do on a regular project, which is just to kind of like, it's gonna take, like, so I've got like two areas coming together, like the parent wood and the new wood. And basically what it's gonna do is it's gonna take a lot of that chatoyant stuff and kind of equalize it. It's not a panacea, like you're not gonna get away with like having like crazy run out differences or something like that, but it just kind of like averages out a chatoyance block, because all of those little particulates are kind of like filling the little nooks and crannies of the wood fibers, and then sending you back kind of generalized information like that Vaseline on the lens trick. So
Do you know what the base medium of shellac flat is? Is it mixed into shellac already?
No, it's some kind of alcohols. I don't know if it's like isopropyl or something like that. The MSDS is on Homestead Finishing. Honestly, I'm getting really close to just recommending diatomaceous earth, though. I've been messing around with just taking, we had some kicking around from some fruity hippie dietary thing that we were trying, and I just decided to start mixing it into shellac to see if it would work as a diffuser, and it seems to.
So did I hear you say that you're going to finish this off in CA?
Yeah, let's do that.
What guides your decision as to what your top coat's going to be?
Well, so this most closely resembles Burgess Bourgeois that I did probably, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something like that. Real similar situation. Crack larger than I wanted to, wouldn't go shut with normal humidity, didn't want to over humidify it, needed in my estimation, a small top spline, but I think it was catalyzed, some kind of catalyzed finish. So there wasn't a lot to do with it for shooting lacquer on it. At least I didn't think so at the time. So I think if you go back and you look on my Instagram, I think it was the Bourgeois, but basically what I did was, it was pretty close to one of the bouts, and I basically taped off a grain line to the bout, and then just did the wiping technique with it up to the bout. So my layer line for the fill and finish was running right along a grain line that I taped off, and it wound up making it look very, very subtle. Like it was pretty difficult to detect. Plus, I've been wanting to go over some fill and finish wiping techniques anyway, so we're gonna do it really quick. So for anybody that's heard this before, I'm sorry, but I'm going to repeat this. I prep before I do any fill and finish repairs. I prep with whatever grit I'm going to sand out to before polish. So if I think that I'm going to put on finish and I'm going to sand it down to 1200 grit before I go to rubbing polishing compound on it, I sand it out to 1200 grit before I put the fill and finish on. A lot of layer lines especially in CA repair, are exacerbated because there's a line in between the CA and the lacquer that is actually your sanding line. So if you sanded to 600 grit and you have to have some abrasion in there. I feel like you have to have some abrasion on there. I don't feel comfortable putting CA just directly onto buffed out finish. I just, it's sticky stuff, and there's a good chance that you're not going to have adhesion issues. But I have had adhesion issues putting CA onto unabraded lacquer before. The fill and finish is a little bit better. I think it's got some solvents in it that naturally kind of heat up lacquer. But if your lacquer is old and hard and not really ready for new lacquer necessarily, then it's going to have a hard time with the CA as well. So like on this project, if I was going to do CA, I would have preferably prepped this whole area with what I was going to do, like before I even did the spline. Like I would have had this whole area prepped out with my lowest grit that I was going to sand to, or excuse me, my highest grit that I was going to sand to before I even started putting it in. But since I wasn't really thinking about that, we'll just do it now. So on spruce, I'm going to braid with the grain. Like a lot of spruce, just, I mean, you've got these nice big long grain lines that will hide all manner, shapes, and sizes of layer lines and swirl mark line or abrasion lines. And if you come in here with a circular pattern and you introduce all kinds of cross grain stuff to it, you're kind of working against the natural, disguising properties of these big, nice, long grain spruce pieces. In general, mostly like in repair, I abrade with the grain. Very rarely do I do kind of big circular patterns like you see. Okay, so on this one, I'm gonna do a wiping finish. Let's see here. And I'm gonna tape off. You know what? This doesn't say edge lock, but it looks an awful lot like edge lock. Any of this stuff, like, don't put this on finish ever. I'm gonna grab some different tape. This dumb looking stuff, this is the best stuff. I'm gonna use some vinyl tape too. Who saw the post about the Les Paul? Everybody know about vinyl tape? Electrical tape will work for this, but you got to be careful because cheap electrical tape, the black will come off with your CA. So I'm gonna put this right along a grain line, but I'm not gonna have it like right next to the spline. I'm gonna be out just a little bit. One of the things you're gonna notice here is, maybe I'll double this back on itself, like yo, and then I'll tape this tape. I got a lot of faith in the vinyl tape not to pull up finish, like it will on crusty finish, but I've not had that much issue with it. But I'm definitely gonna tape to the tape. Or I'm gonna have like the majority of my hold down force to the tape. You can pat it off on your neck, on your leg too, if you want to do that. So there's a couple secrets to doing a wipe on finish. Actually, Ted, can you give me the overhead? One of them is cheap white paper towels. You don't want Bounty, like anything that's like super absorbent, like it doesn't work as well. The cheap paper towels that are really thin and would really make you upset in a kitchen. They're the best for doing CA, like dollar store paper towels. So the other secret is to kick first. So I'm taking the glue boost. Don't hose down your project. Take it, spray it onto the paper towel, and then wipe the paper towel onto the project. Just that little bit. Then you grab the fill and finish. And you wipe that onto the project. Then you take your kicker rag, you throw that rag away, you kick it again, you wipe that onto the project. Then you take your paper towel. Don't start wiping it as soon as you put it on there. Let it soak in just a little bit. You don't want to like have like a big puddle come off of your paper towel. Wipe that on. Same thing. Pick, wipe.
So Ian, is this your barrier coat or are you building up your final finish?
You know what? On a lot of guitars, like on something with poly, for the most part, this would have been my final finish. I would have like just buffed this up and dealt, sucked it up and dealt with whatever layer lines that I got. I gotta tell you, like I've been using the Mohawk Ultra Flow a little bit more lately, and I sprayed some over a fill and finish repair that I did and just kind of misted it on like I was saying I did on that roundup, and holy moly does that stuff work well over polyurethane. Just nuts. I mean, there was a layer line for sure, but with the fill and finish you're still kind of hosed with sheen, like whatever. It's a pretty high sheen product, and so if you've got like a lower sheen poly situation, maybe like it's a guitar that has seen a lot of wear or something, like it doesn't take mechanical sheen modifications very well. It tends to exacerbate the layer line a little bit, and so just being able to come back over the top of it with some of that ultra flow mixed with flat and gloss and like just a lot of retarders so it lays out very nice. It's pretty groovy.
I really like the final flow, but it does have a different, look to it when you have it on top of your finish.
Final flow or ultra flow? Is there a final flow too? They got so many different things. So the last thing I do is one little kick.
Was that repair that you're talking about on a lacquer finish or a poly?
Ollie. That Epiphone that I did that side munch on was one. So this is a little hard to see. I'm going to move my camera around, but the angle that I had it on for doing this was the worst angle. Like if I hold it on edge, oh boy, sorry about that, guys. But like that right there is 90% of the angles that I've got. As soon as I flip it like this, that's where the bummer angle is. That right there, because this is so good right here, like that's damn near invisible on that angle. And this is why wood selection is so important. If I was to touch up, like if I was to like look at that angle and say, oh, well, all I need to do is darken it just a little bit. Like all of a sudden that angle is going to jump out. This one right here, like I'd be super tempted in the old days to get that a little bit darker on that angle right there. I would have been super tempted to go in and start fooling around with it. In my experience, it just does not pay off. I should have, I should have looked at more wood before I throw it in. Iris, she talks about trying wood 3 different times on certain projects. That means like putting this spline in, going, nope, taking it back out, putting another one in, saying nope, taking it out, putting another one in. But like that right there on a $3,000 guitar, I mean, it's tightly fit, looks pretty good. I'd say, ship it. Like if this was a vintage guitar, I might take it a little bit. I might take it to the next level just a little bit more. But something about the way that I have the lights in here too is making that look a little bit worse than it is. Like it really looks pretty good in person. So the next step is to sand all this out and buff it. We've gone over that before, so I probably won't go over that again. Any questions about this up to this point?
Were you saying that you might go over that fill and finish with the Ultra Flow?
Yeah, I think I would. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I've had really good luck with it. Like
I used that, by the way, on a finish thing I just did, and it works so well.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. So how well it blends things in with little effort. I mean, if you think about it, those furniture things are meant, guys are going into people's houses to fix large furniture that they're not going to take out and take into their spray booth. And so like laying out, and they're also not going to bring in like crazy, get buffing compound everywhere. So the whole name of the game is going in there with a couple rattle cans that you can just kind of mist on and have it look pretty good and get out the door and get paid. So speaking of Iris and the taking things out, I wanted to show you quickly how I would go about taking this out if I wanted to try this again, because there's probably going to be in this in your journey of doing these things, there's probably going to be a time when you want to pull it out. There's nothing for it in my experience but to take a knife to it, and I would take the knife, get a fresh blade. So this is my technique for doing this. And it's pretty, boy, I wish you guys could see this in person. It looks so much better than it does on the camera. That's crazy. I would never take this one out, by the way. So I would come in with the knife. How are we looking there?
That's good.
And I would just start cutting very carefully, not trying to cut all the way through, but just right down the middle with my knife. Pretty hard to do on 20,000s, but right there, I just messed it up, but I was taking too deep of a cut is why that messed up. Take another cut just a little bit deeper. So a couple things are happening here. I am cutting this, but I'm also displacing it just a little bit. I'm compressing those fibers and moving them back. All right, come back with some sandpaper and put it in that slot. I got a little bit of weirdness because of the fill and finish. I should have gotten rid of that. But with it displaced like that, I can go back in with sandpaper and just draw that sandpaper down that crack until I've removed it. And that is pretty much the best way I've found for starting these over. Once you get to a certain level, it's probably best to make your sandpaper rigid. So one thing I would suggest doing, you don't want to create like a wonky thing, but it's still too thin to like get a feeler gauge with sticky sandpaper in on it. So sometimes what I've done is I've come back with some thin CA and just hit the back of the sandpaper with some thin CA. And then hope, this is going to work better with the actual like non-wax impregnated CA. But just that little bit of CA gives you some sanding paper that's just a little bit more rigid for doing that with. Everybody see that? Any questions about that? Anybody got any
Is that
better
like
idea?
is that like 120 grit?
This is 220.
Okay.
And do not use any of that black like wet dry sandpaper. So the gold 600, I just ponied up for some of the gold 600 StuMax sticky, the 3M sticky. That stuff is pretty handy. I'd like to get sheets of that without the sticky adhesive.
There was an Amazon listing of that stuff. It was 50 sheets for $6 of the 600 grit. No sticky.
All right. Any questions on this? Sometime in the future, we'll do one with that requires a little bit of modification. I don't really know how to. I think we'll do one with the sunburst. We'll do a sunburst top spline at some time and go over how to actually apply color to, or at least how I apply color to top spline. So, any questions on this?
I have a question about the UltraFlow.
Yeah.
Have you ever used the UltraFlow bond
No,
for
I haven't.
catalyzed finishes? Okay.
I haven't. What's the story on it?
Apparently it's like formulated especially for UV or catalyzed finishes or poly.
Does it come with like a whole host of sheens?
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah, let's get some. Let's try it out. You want,
Okay.
can I put you in charge of spearheading that operation?
Yeah. I'll try it out.
So
So you spray the UltraFlow out of the airbrush?
I do, yeah. Yeah, it works really nice in the airbrush. And on that roundup, I sprayed it directly into my small touch-up gun, which is like the small size gun, and I shot it out of that, and it worked really well out of a cheap Harbor Freight touch-up gun.
Cool.
Doug, you look like you got something you want to say?
Just as it relates to what you were just talking about with the UltraFlow, and because I noticed you had mentioned several times before that you'll spray out of a can of whatever into a cup, into the airbrush, and then spray with that. And I don't know if you've covered it already, but I'm, somebody who still just has their airbrush in their drawer. Because I never bothered messing with it. Have you ever done like this is the do's and don'ts of airbrushing, and how to
I think we cover it a little bit in one of the early Ding Kings. I'm not sure. But so the SG one is going to be heavy airbrush. That's going to be where we really get into the airbrush stuff. But I think I did do some, I don't know. Ted, do you remember when I talked about airbrush stuff? Or
2
did
months
I?
ago, maybe 3 months ago. There was an airbrush for luthiers because I remember doing the thumbnail for it.
Oh yeah, you know what? Maybe that did we do a full thing on it, or was that just a short we did for YouTube?
I really can't remember.
You know what, Doug? I'll go back and look at
find it and
that.
Send it to you.
I'll look at that airbrush for luthiers thing and see if that was like part of a lunch break or what.
That's
But
posted, I think.
What's that?
I think the whole thing's posted.
Okay.
25th of July. Airbrush for luthiers.
Awesome. 25th of July,
27th.
Steve says. Steve, how's that leg doing?
Right now it's pretty sore. My cast is quite tight, but yeah, it's
Oh
coming
my
along.
God.
I've still got 3 weeks in the cast.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah, it was my birthday this weekend, so I was spent it sitting on the couch.
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, I suppose you're young. That probably doesn't sound like a birthday at your age, but at my age, that just sounds delightful.
Well, I guess it wasn't too bad getting weighted on hand and foot. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I'd rather be out and about.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm here for questions. Anybody have any questions about any of the projects they got going? I kind of wanted to do a open some stuff up for Q&A. Has anybody got anything going sideways? Wait a second, Carl, you're in the chat.
Hey,
Carl, are
hey,
you
I'm
there?
here. I'm here.
You want to go over your thing really quick? Do you mind doing it with everybody looking? We don't have to. Matter of fact, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. We'll do it one-on-one.
Yeah, that'd probably be better. Because
All right.
we're trying to get out to Costco to pick up some lights for our Christmas tree. So,
Awesome. Well, have a good Christmas.
thank you.
All right, everybody. Going once, going twice, going 3 times on questions. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I was thinking about y'all on Thanksgiving, thinking about how thankful I am of all you guys. And I just wanted to, as we go into the new year, get rid of this last year. I want to thank everybody for making this thing happen. So without getting too mushy, y'all have a good remainder of your weekend.
Thanks,
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks,
All right.
Ian.